Hi, welcome to the Friday evening update on Tropical Storm Cristobal. As always, these thoughts are mine alone, and in making decisions regarding Cristobal, please refer to the National Hurricane Center, your local National Weather Service office, and your local authorities for the latest regarding your area and potential evacuations. So here we have Cristobal, a very large storm that has emerged off of the Yucatan Peninsula and is now in the central Gulf of Mexico, south central Gulf of Mexico. And you have a kind of elongated system that is very broad and is still intact. So we have a kind of average between the European model solution and the GFS model solution, where while the GFS was broad, it also completely destroyed the center of circulation, and the European model was much more central and much more concentrated and more compact, and we're not seeing that. But pretty much what this means is that the storm is still able to intensify and has not been completely destroyed, and so we are dealing with a kind of a stronger storm, but not too strong of a storm. So this is a minimal tropical storm right now. The winds are at 40 miles per hour, and this is not super intense here. However, the wind field is very large. If you look at the wind field graphic depicted by the National Hurricane Center, you can see that on this northeastern side, there is a huge wind field that is expanding almost more than 100 miles out from the center of circulation here. And so what that does is it brings a lot more water, and you can see that that is reflected by the surge graphics here. You can see on the experimental storm surge graphic, you have 3 to 5 feet of storm surge being brought near where the center will be coming ashore, and you can see this very large swath of water rises here across a very large portion of the coastline. And so the effects of the system will be spread out over a very large area, and you can also see that on the U.S. rainfall potential. You can see that it will be bringing a lot of rain to a very large portion of the Gulf Coast and the Florida Peninsula. You can see that the 4+ inch totals of rain spread over a pretty large area, and so that is why you do not refer to the track, which has the center of the storm coming over the central Louisiana coast, but you can see that the effects are well to the east of the system. It's a very large system, and that's why there are tropical storm warnings that are well removed from the actual landfall point here that the National Hurricane Center has, which is why you always need to check your local National Weather Service office for the latest regarding your area for Cristobal. So here we have the GFS model forecast here. We're going to go back to 18 hours. You can see that this storm is going to kind of develop a shape here that's very comma-esque. It's very, not super circular here. There's not really a not your classic look for a strong system. And that is because you have a lot of dry air that will be getting punched into the core of this mass of convection here that is to the east of the system, and that will begin to separate the mass of convection that will be dumping a lot of rain over Florida from the actual circulation here. And it doesn't really matter for the actual wind field of the system. It will still be very broad, and it will still have widespread effects. You can have tropical storm force winds that are well removed from the center, but conversely, this actually helps the system kind of intensify a little bit before landfall, because it is able to kind of recenter itself and organize before landfall here, and you have a much better defined system than it when it's like this, because all the convection in this kind of shape of a system is largely to the east and is being displaced from the center, and so it's kind of just a messy system. But at the same time, when you have a larger system that is more circular, it's able to intensify and kind of gradually get tighter. And the problem that the system is facing is the timing. And it doesn't have much time before it makes landfall here. You can see that it has like only 12 hours before it makes landfall when it finally is able to separate itself in this massive convection. But it does tighten up some, and that is largely due to the non-existent shear that is over it. There's not a whole lot of shear that is on top of it. The upper level flow is very, very calm, and there's not too much shear that's being produced over the system because that trough is no longer near the system and is being pushed back. You have an upper level ridge that kind of slows down the system, so we're going to need to watch how slow the system is once it gets up here and is separated from that convective mass. So we're going to be watching two things: how slow the system is and how much of a turn left it does. It's not like super ambiguous now. It's pretty obvious that we're going to have a system that makes landfall here in Louisiana. It's not going to make a dramatic change, turn all the way into the Galveston area. It's not going to happen. This is just, kind of minor details that need to be fleshed out in the overall forecast of the system, because we could have a slightly more intense storm that could be a hurricane when it makes landfall on the Louisiana coast, which would mean for the areas that are affected by the center of circulation, you could have hurricane force winds, which would lead to a little more damage wind-wise, but overall, it doesn't really matter for the overall surge forecast. And as we looked at earlier, the surge will be pretty high in these areas regardless, and you have areas that could be inundated here along this coast. This part of the coast is pretty vulnerable to storm surge flooding, and that, coupled with the high rainfall totals that will be with this associated with this storm, could cause a lot of trouble here. And so overall, we're just kind of watching the final details that need to be fleshed out about this forecast, which will determine how strong the system is at landfall, which could make a little bit of a difference. But overall, what we're looking at right now is a very large system that will be coming ashore and bringing in a lot of water from a very large area of ocean that it is associated with. And this storm will be affecting a pretty large portion of the coast here, and mainly on the eastern side. And so that's all I have to say. Have a good night.